Hello, good morning. Let's make some coffee first. I'm just gonna make some coffee here. Oh, hold on. Yeah. I'll need to make some coffee. Yeah, it's morning now. It's don't forget a meal. I don't have a meal. Unfortunately, all I can do is make a coffee. No meal, only coffee. Hello, nice to see you. What? I need to throw away these pouches. Right, that's taken care of. I'll try not to fall asleep today. Don't fall asleep! Don't fall asleep! Don't sleep! Don't sleep! No sleeping! Alright. Guys, this is gonna be a long series. Let's check it out, huh? This is gonna be a long series. What? Thank you very much, Anonymous, for a super chat for breakfast. Woohoo! We're getting breakfast. All right, we can get breakfast a little bit later. Thank you very much for the super chat. That actually helps a lot. Thank you very much. Breakfast. Let me just mix my coffee. So, yo, what's up? Hello, Dunguyen. We're gonna watch Destiny Lore by Bife. But my name is Bife. Getting warmed up for the big Warhammer 40k lore dive. Bro, like... Destiny, at least, like, I know a lot about it. I disagree with this video being in a chronological video. Oh, I see. It's chronological. That's very strange. I thought it would be released as well, but oh well. Cancer Crab, hello. Thank you very much for coming. I suppose we shall start in like once 1 p.m. comes around, so that is in 4 minutes or 3 minutes. So I've got time to drink my my coffee. See. Warhammer 40k is a little too much for me, but Destiny I grew up with. Destiny 1 I grew up with. I play that stuff every day. I didn't even play the story. I played the Crucible. I was a Crucible baby. I wasn't very good, but I really enjoyed the Crucible in Destiny 1 until one day I figured out it's done. It's over because everybody had moved on to Destiny. Oh, I know. Everybody had moved on to a DLC. You needed the latest DLC to access the rest of the Crucible or something, because like I think that's what happened. I remember like I had queue times that were super long because nobody was playing the base Crucible anymore. That was it. That's why I stopped playing Destiny 1. See, back when the PS4 was new, or like a little bit new, right? When the PS4 was new, my mommy got me a PS4. My mommy got me a PS4, and my relatives made fun of me for having a console at my age. I was already old, and I was still playing games, and they made fun of me, and the first thing I downloaded was Resogun. Then, oh, I remember this was during the Christmas that Sony got hacked. Sony got hacked, guys. Sony got hacked, and people on Christmas couldn't play their PS4s, and like all I could play was the stuff that was preloaded on it because it couldn't update. Do you remember that, guys? Do you remember the time Sony got hacked? That was the reason I couldn't play anything else. But after that hacked, I couldn't play Destiny. That's when I played Destiny, when there was a demo, and people were saying Destiny sucks, and then I played Destiny, and it was really fucking good. I played the Cosmodrome levels, and I remember that very clearly because the gunplay was fucking amazing. The game was really fucking good, and so I really have I pre-ordered that shit, and I have really good memories about Destiny. I have really good memories about Destiny. I remember the lore master. Was he called the lore master? There was one guy in the home base, where he was like telling you all about the Traveler, the space age, and the humans. It was telling you about all this stuff. I love it. I love that. I love that guy. That was so majestic. That was so freaking majestic. The speaker. Yeah. The speaker. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he spoke for the. Was it like he spoke for the Traveler? He was a connection between the Traveler and the, I just know he knew a lot of stuff. And he told you a bunch of stuff. Anyway, he spoke on behalf of. Yeah, I still remember it. Yeah. Okay. It didn't speak through him. I see. Okay. So you will know who the Traveler is. You will know who the speaker is. Let's just get right into it, guys. Let's watch Destiny lore. Alright. I'll just set a marker on the stream so we know where it starts. Destiny lore start. But first, 2 hours about Ocean.
My name is Bife here. I've covered Destiny's lore for just over 7 years now, and ahead of the end of Destiny's first saga, I'm taking this chance to give you all a look into the complete story of Destiny so far. But if I can take just a moment or two of your time, there are some things we should really.
By the way, this video is 10 hours.
Firstly, I wanted to let you know that this video is the longest that I've ever made, and if you're watching this after the premiere, you will see that it is well over 9 hours long. There are 2 intermissions for you in this video, so be sure to use them. Get up, stretch, hydrate, and do all those other things that you might need to do in the break. Take your time.
Hey, Bill.
In parts, I'm certainly not offended. In fact, I built the video with you guys in mind as well. There are chapters that you can go to and navigate to, and of course, if you want to come back at any particular point in time, you can watch this all in bite-sized chunks. If you want to skip to a specific part of the story, it's there for that too. I also want to be frank with you guys about something.
It's time to play Destiny 2.
Making these larger projects is not cheap. And I make sure to invest in larger projects because, well, the quality will end up speaking for itself. It's not an insurmountable barrier, but it does mean that every big project is a very big decision to make.
Bro, Renegade is really good. Well, I've only played the first mission, but it's really good.
That's why we went looking for a sponsor who would help us cover the costs and justify the creation of this video. They gave me complete creative control over how to talk about them. So before we even mention who they are, I just want to go ahead and shoot straight with you all and tell you that this video was actually possible thanks to their funding. So with that in mind, hopefully that makes you a lot more pleased to hear that this video was sponsored by Geology, who I'll go ahead and talk about for a bit. Geology's mission is to make great
Can you turn
skincare easier. The important
Can
problem
we skip the
is that
skincare?
for most of us.
There, it's also the Precursor. Who is it? It's a little loud. Oh, there. D2 won't be in active development. It's crazy.
Of course, where we should begin. But what truly happened at the beginning of our story is the subject of much debate. Legends and myths of old tell us of how there was a place before time and the universe, known as the Garden. Within this garden there stood a tree of silver wings, and vast meadows of potential and metaphor. Within the grove there were two figures. First, there was a gardener, who during the long days would seed life in rapturous celebration.
Okay.
Throughout the garden, this life would grow and bloom into many wild forms, until at the fall of dusk, the winnower came, and with a scything blade cut away the chaff from the wheat. The gardener and the winnower are rumored to have existed in this cycle for untold eons, until the gardener grew dissatisfied with it, believing it to have grown repetitive and unremarkable. Across this game of existence that the gardener and the winnower played, a single repetitive pattern always emerged. It was always the winning play, a final shape that defined the form of victory.
Final shape? What?
The gardener insisted that there should be a new rule that allowed for new complexity to also find success. The winnower disagreed, stating that from this idea, unnecessary suffering would be born. From this disagreement, conflict brewed between the gardener and the winnower. Their conflict brought about the creation of the universe, and the garden fell into ruin. The gardener and the winnower fought and brought down the tree of silver wings, and left its stump to smoke amid the meadows. If rumors are to be believed, this conflict also brought about the escape of primal patterns that survived and took root in our universe with an aim of survival at all costs. These were known as the Vex. Though you might know them by their brass frames, they are actually the tiniest of molecular life, built into a connected consensus, radiolarian structures creating grand designs. This story of the gardener and winnower and their conflict was told to us.
Wait, the Vex were the robots
interactions with the
that you fight in D1?
The great pyramid vessels of our most ancient enemy. It gives us some of our only potential ideas about what occurred at the start of the universe. Whether this story is true or not is still debated to this day. But what is
the ones that you shoot in the stomach?
The primal forces that the gardener and winnower supposedly aligned with are very real. The gardener seemingly was aligned with the light, a power associated with the physical universe, creation and chaos, matter, gravity, energy. The winnower seemed to be aligned with the darkness, which is associated with control and the domain of the mind, one's will, dreams, and nightmares. These powers of the light and the dark are known to supersede the typical laws of the universe, bending and breaking those laws of physics and matter on the whims of those that use these powers of light and dark. They sidestep causality, and for these reasons individuals who wield the light and dark are referred to as paracausal or acausal. We may not know whether the light and dark truly originated with the mythical gardener and winnower, but we do know that these powers are found in the universe in a pair of ancient presences, incomprehensible things, entities of a sort. They are the Traveler, which is a source of the light, and the Veil, which is a source of the darkness. When these two great constructs
I never saw the
Veil
before.
But our story truly begins with their discovery by an ancient and unnamed people long ago. For the purposes of our story, I shall simply call them the Precursors to all that would follow. The Precursors were once nomads who would wander across their homeworlds.
It's funny because there's Precursors and Forerunners.
They discovered something buried in the wastes of their world. They discovered the Traveler. It blessed
It was
this
buried?
precursor civilization with the bounty that it would provide to thousands of others before eventually reaching humanity. The nomadic precursors advanced their technology and society under the silent benevolence of the traveler. But whilst it doted on them with many gifts, its silence meant...
Hold on. There was like precursors here. Then there's forerunners in Halo. What was it called in Mass Effect? Protheans? No. Look. What was it called in Mass Effect? Protheans, yeah.
that the precursors were left with little in the way of guidance. They had been given abundance, but no meaning or direction.
Oh.
Their search for meaning defined their entire society.
It's called Horori in
All of them
Warframe.
were seeking to understand how to bring about a perfect universe. Many factions would search for this simple idea and how it might be accomplished. They called it the final shape.
Hold on. A perfect universe with many factions would search for this simple idea.
Would search for this simple idea and how it might be accomplished. They called it the final shape.
Okay.
After much time, the scholars of the Precursor people discovered that the Traveler shared a connection to another great structure out in the deepest reaches of space. This was the Veil, and they rushed to claim it after they were made aware of its existence, realizing that whilst the Traveler presented the powers of the light, the Veil presented the powers of something very different: darkness. To the Precursor people, this discovery was meant to change everything for the better. They knew much about the light of the Traveler. They knew of the bounty it could bring, but they also knew that the light bred chaos and destruction when untamed and unchecked.
Light can
Through
bring
the Veil,
chaos.
they learned the power of darkness, and saw that through its ability to control, the merging of the two might create a degree of autonomy over the universe that had never before been conceived of. They aspired in that moment to control the chaos of the
Oh, like
light by
abundance.
strengthening
Thanks for
its connection to the
explaining it in
Veil
style.
and merging the two. If only they had succeeded, they might at last have forged the final shape that they had conceived of so long ago. But when they attempted to forge this connection, the Traveler rejected the link and abandoned the Precursor people. What happened next must have been the most
Were the
calamitous
Precursor
time
the
within
Fallen?
Precursor society. Terror and
Oh, well, don't
uncertainty
tell me,
must
don't
have
tell me, don't
spread
tell me,
through
don't
their
tell me.
minds. There must have been bitterness. There must have been hatred.
No.
But no matter what they felt, what happened next would bring the ruin that they had experienced to untold trillions across the stars. The Precursor people, having been abandoned by the light, turned to the powers of darkness for salvation. Understand that the light is not inherently
Traveler
good
was
and the
like,
darkness is not
ew, I
inherently
don't
evil.
like the
The
Veil.
Precursors were fueled by hatred, and their desperation spoke for itself. Recovered records indicate that a group amongst them, known as the Penitent, struck down all others who dissented against their ways. They believed that they were meant to fix the universe and create the final shape, regardless of whether the universe consented or not.
What?
They used the powers within darkness to merge their consciousnesses together into a compound being of immense power. Their assimilation spelled an end to the Precursor civilization and gave rise to a wretched thing, born of a bottomless hatred of the Traveler.
Bro, why does every Precursor civilization want to merge into one? Also, what brought this on? I was playing Destiny 2 and I was like, this is pretty fucking cool.
This entity would be known by 1,000 names over 1,000 worlds, all of them burned to nothingness over the course of its existence. We would one day come to know it as the Witness.
The Witness.
And so it set out into the stars to pursue the Traveler. With it, the Witness took the vessels of the civilization that had brought about its creation, an armada of obsidian black pyramid vessels, which represented destruction untold. Along with this black fleet, the Witness brought the Veil, pursuing the Traveler with the same intent as its Precursor creators. the witness would see the combination of light and darkness, and with it, a world without change, a world without chaos would be brought about. An immutable, perfected, final shape to the universe.
Final shape.
And this time, unlike the Precursors, the witness would not seek the final shape out of a need for perfection alone. It would seek it out of a desire to subjugate the traveler and all those that might oppose its will. But if it was to succeed, the witness would need to gather adherents to its cause, disciples that would help pave the way for its purpose.
I'm not even like doubting it. There's like rule 34 of this guy.
That is what led to the rise of the first disciple, and they would not call him a conqueror or a mere tyrant. He was worse. He would be known as the subjugator.
Yeah, tune on the adjugator. That's a tyranny reference. Nobody played that. 20 pics. I see. Lubre's ring. Hello, brains.
After the Traveler had left the Precursor people to their fate, it enacted a pattern that it would follow for eons to come. It would move onward and find another civilization to uplift. This cycle has been repeated countless times, and as best we know it in the Traveler's wake, the Witness has always followed, meaning that wherever the Traveler has found itself, eventually, calamity and ruin would follow.
Okay, guys, you know what this feels like? You know what this feels like? It feels like a couple that was like, oh, you're my everything. You were teaching me so much stuff. And then the precursors were like, oh, can we introduce like, you know, a third in our relationship? And then the traveler was like, ew, why would you even consider that? And then she left, and then the precursor was like, damn, I'm going to like love you by force. And then the fucking traveler was like on its BPD arc where it hops from person to person, like I will be your light. No, never mind, you're boring now. I will be your light, and you're boring now. And then the traveler is like, no, the traveler is like fucking the manic pixie dream girl. Bro, the traveler is an e-girl, and like you have to defeat her evil ex-boyfriend, which is the fucking precursor, the witness. And it turns out the witness was not that bad. It was like actually her fault, because like she was being mean or something like that. I don't fucking know. That's Cabal.
Over the course of its journey, the traveler would arrive at a world orbiting a binary star called Lubre. It had blessed the Lubrean people with the bounty of the light, and they would also grow and rise in much the same way as the Precursor civilization had. The Lubrean civilization would be split in two by this action. There were those who lived beneath the Traveler, forming a harsh regime that would rule the planet. This regime would send out its killers that hunted traditional tribal peoples and suppressed them. Those that lived free of this regime had to contend with the two harsh suns of Lubre and with the terrifying fauna that called the planet home. By the time the Traveler had left the Lubreans, the division in their society had become a wound that would never heal, a scar upon their people that governed their entire way of life, be they of the regime or of the tribes. Savagery ruled this world.
See what I'm saying?
It would be its undoing.
See what I'm saying? Yeah, these are the only subs, I think. Yeah, these are the only subs. These are AI subs, by the way. But like, this is what I'm saying, guys. Like the fucking traveler ruins a civilization yet again. Traveler ruins another man.
For it was into this world and these savage peoples that Rhulk was born. Though he was originally born into the tribal nomadic society, Rhulk's parents had come from the regime's city. As Rhulk grew up, he saw how the regime's sanctioned killers, known as stalkers, hunted those from the tribal peoples and seemingly spared none in their quest for blood. There was only one who was bloodier than the stalkers, though.
Traveler call-out post.
Rhulk. Born of the regime's savagery, Rhulk would return the stalkers' malice to them and defended his newfound people by bathing in the stalkers' own bloody viscera as he tore them in two. But Rhulk's family did not approve of such savagery, and eventually they would be his moderating influence, and he would be drawn away from such acts of gratuitous violence by the family that he had chosen. But for his son, Rhulk, these actions were not the mark of a villain. They were simply what was necessary to survive. With his father's example driving him, Rhulk developed a sadistic streak and followed his father's footsteps into violence. By the time he had killed his first stalker, Rhulk would see his father being carried away
I don't know
by a
these
raiding
people
band
at all.
of the regime's killers, and in his father's name, he swore vengeance. He hunted the stalkers through the darkened wastes of his homeworld, seeking vengeance for his father Rhulk. He took a glaive from one of the stalkers and called it Rhulk's Sword. It was his objective.
Sword.
He would defend his father, just like his father would have defended him. But by the time Rhulk discovered what had truly happened, his realization would change the name of his glaive, for his father's betrayal was written upon the robes he wore. He now wore the colors of the regime and the stalkers. Rhulk was carried away by the stalkers to the regime's city. He would have died there, but his father spoke on his behalf and told the regime authorities that Rhulk would enroll in the stalkers, for he was a mighty killer. And Rhulk would do so, because at least amongst the ranks of these killers, there was a degree of honesty, despite his years of battling against them. The regime may have been harsh, but nobody lied about who they were, unlike his father. And thus, the glaive that he had stolen from a stalker had its name changed from Rhulk's Ward to Rhulk's Bane. Most importantly for Rhulk, he was able to freely enjoy the bloodlust that his father had
the subs
stated
are kinda
long ago.
wonky.
One day, his father left the city to search for the family that he had left behind. Rhulk intended to smuggle them into the city proper so that they might finally live in peace. But in order to reach the city, they would need to cross an abyss over a narrow bridge, a scar across all of Lubre, much like their society had been cleft in two. On the other side of this narrow bridge,
He's really delving into this
this
civilization.
Rhulk
Are they
was
important for
standing,
later?
and he intended to end his father.
Oh.
But curiously enough, Rhulk was momentarily swayed from violence. His mother and father apologized. They apologized for Rhulk's exile when he had followed his father's violence, for the poor example his father had set long ago, for the inaction he had taken, for not telling him more, for not telling him how the regime's actions could be seen as cruel, and why he had chosen to save his family now. For but a moment, it seemed as though Rhulk's family might find peace at last. Perhaps if things had proceeded differently, Rhulk might have also found peace and reconciliation alongside his family, and they might have lived out the days that they had left in the city in some measure of harmony. But for one reason or another, Rhulk fell into the abyss. Did he fall of his own accord? Was he pushed? Did he trip? Was
There's
something
no way he
else
tripped.
there to pull him down? The circumstances are not clear, but what is clear is this. When Rhulk looked up at the faces of the family that he was slowly falling away from, he did not see sorrow or heartbreak or pain as he fell. In their faces he realized something else was written. They were relieved. This was the betrayal that would define Rhulk. It showed him the truth of the universe. It showed him that there was no place for weakness or the petty lies that held society together.
Did he come back?
Like his. Deep in the abyss, he would at last discover truth. How long Rhulk fell for isn't known, but when he did
he
finally
did
land
come
in
back.
this dismal swamp at the base of the abyss, he was not alone. There were myriad creatures moving to consume his very body, broken as it was. But it was here as well that Rhulk beheld something else. For the first time, he laid eyes upon the witness.
Ooh.
It saw Rhulk for what he was, a thing of hatred, ready to bring ruin to those liars above. The witness mended his body and his broken glaive. It empowered Rhulk with terrible darkness, and with an ability known only as the witness's luster, something we still do not understand fully to this day. When Rhulk asked what he was meant to do, the only word the witness uttered was ruin. With his newfound power in hand, and with a purpose granted to him in vengeance, Rhulk climbed the endless ravine of the abyss, clawing his way up out of darkness until he beheld the surface once more. A confused sun had fallen into the pit, but what had crawled out was no sun at all. It was a monster, a new being of hate. Rhulk returned to the city of Lubre and enacted his final judgment of his people. He first slew his parents, then the rest of his family. The city watched on in horror and saw Rhulk for what he was. But in his hands, Rhulk held a power greater than even the slaughter that he had enacted. He held the witness's luster, and in the other hand his glaive. Rhulk siphoned the energy from Lubre's own sapphiric sun and channeled it into the witness's gifts and his own glaive. He struck at the surface of his planet. The weapon had been twice renamed because of his father, and had been renamed once more in accordance with its new purpose, a purpose displayed with but this singular strike. It would be known as Lubre's Ruin. And beneath Rhulk's blade, with the power of the witness, the planet cracked.
Ooh.
Rhulk destroyed his entire planet and shattered the suns of Lubre. Seeing the chaos that he had wrought, for a moment Rhulk was overwhelmed. Seeing the devastation, he fell into the
Such devastation! It was not my intention. Where's that from, guys? Where is that from? Such devastation, it was not my intention. Like something like that. I've heard that many times before. Where is that from?
ever-expanding abyss that had consumed his world, and he lost consciousness once more. And when he awoke, there was no Lubre, no regime, no city. Only he remained, the last known survivor of his entire species. He beheld the witness.
Was it Lubre? Such devastation. This was not my intention. Oh, this was from Final Fantasy. Yeah.
Once more, and saw the totality of all that had happened across his life. He begged and pleaded and wept and regretted. The lesson the witness would show him, the lesson it was attempting to teach, was that these feelings were of no consequence, that all the life on Lubre was of no consequence, that they were of no consequence because they did not serve its goals, the witness's eternal purpose, the formation of finality, the end of the universe. In this context, no one that Rhulk had killed had mattered. Only Rhulk mattered. Rhulk had long believed that his civilization was but lies, and so the lies of his civilization melted away. As he stood and foresaw his new place in the universe, Rhulk was asked by the witness what he felt. And to this, as he took his glaive in one hand,
or did he fight back?
And the witness's luster in the other, Rhulk said, relief. It was here that he became the first disciple of the witness, the first of its messengers of doom that would faithfully destroy its foes. Though not all would serve for the same reasons, all would serve. Not as kings, not as gods, but as disciples, prophets, saviors serving existence. Whilst the many disciples of the Witness would conduct many terrible campaigns of war and terror, Rhulk would be the first, and by most accounts the most powerful, and from his actions would spawn a legacy of bloodshed that would make the stars themselves tremble. A legacy that would begin with Lubre's destruction, and whose heights would be found upon a distant gaseous world, an ancient place with a roiling ocean beneath a depth of cloud, a world known as Fundament.
Fundament. You know, my favorite faction in this game is the Fallen. I like the idea of like a cool civilization that was like abandoned.
With his newfound purpose, Rhulk would slaughter countless civilizations in the name of the Witness.
No, cause like the Fallen is like they were like blessed by the Traveler, just like all these places, and then the Traveler left them, and they're like, "Please take me back, please, I love you, Traveler."
In the name of its great final purpose. The greatest conquest of the first disciple and his Dark Master would take place on a distant gas giant called Fundament, a world with 52 moons, and whose gravity was so great that smaller planetoids had been pulled in by its gravity.
It's a big
collided
planet.
with its surface, collapsing into its oceans and becoming great continents on its surface. It was on this world that the Witness and its first disciple would feverishly go about the busy work of sowing devastation once more. The Traveler had settled above Fundament, amongst its moons, and was uplifting a civilization there known as the Ammonite. The Witness foresaw that soon it would move to uplift another species on the world below, on Fundament itself. They were the Krill. All the while, there were even greater forms of life here, Leviathan creatures that dwelled within the oceans. These Leviathans were the first of the Witness's targets. It came to them and offered them powers nestled within darkness. In those powers lay a truth and purpose so terrible that it would haunt the very shape of existence with its promises of death. The Witness offered them the logic of the sword, the truth that nothing has ever lived that will not one day die, and the attached premise that those who are strong enough to exist will go on existing by the right of the sword alone. But this was not mere philosophy. It was a praxis that led to real power. Curses and magics wreathed in the darkness itself would be derived from the sword logic. In time, the Leviathans would be twisted into new forms if they followed this dark power. But even before those that consumed of these magics turned into the great ravenous worms that we would know of now.
Oh, now we're gonna black pill some fish.
Their people had been cleft in two, and a war was soon to break out. The war between the Leviathans and the traitors that would one day become the worms was brutal and vicious. Fundament's oceans roiled with blood, as father and mother fought brother and sister, fought son and daughter. It was a roiling carnage that engulfed an entire people and left few survivors. One was a great creature known as Asa. She managed to escape her people's fate by sinking into an ascendant dream. Seemingly, this means that she used the ascendant plane to escape, a parallel reality to our own that mirrors it in a darker, more changeable form to those that have strong will. She would fall through ascendant dreams until she returned to the physical universe and landed in the oceans of a distant system called Sol.
Bro slept so much, he fell into somewhere else. Bro was just like, I'm asleep, and then he was like, this is such good sleep, I'm no longer here.
She would carry with her the knowledge of who the Witness had been, what it had become, and what it intended.
You needed something to about sleeping, yeah.
Her eyes were wide and her gaze was long. She would spy the war across the stars, and would understand the shape of fate and how it needed to progress if we were to stop the oncoming calamity. But the battle back on Fundament continued to rage. When the worms were at an end, there were but a handful that remained. A mother.
Oh, the worms
Zeta,
lost.
and her 5 offspring, Yul, Zol, Aya, and Aka. They had embraced the way of the sword logic as was described by the witness, and they were imprisoned in the deep. There, a Leviathan watched over them as it had them held in Fundament's crushing core. It isn't clear if this creature who imprisoned them was of the same species as Asa and what the worms had once been. It might well have been, and if so, it might well have been the last of the survivors of that great war, the last who rejected the witness's offer. We simply do not know, but what we do know is that its power was great enough that it could dominate the remaining worms. It spanned the supposed size of continents, and was known to all others simply as the Leviathan. With the worms' numbers diminished, Rhulk and the witness would enact the next stage of their plan: subjugation. Rhulk would dive into the deep and enlist the worms in servitude to the witness's plan. He effortlessly conquered the Leviathan, which addressed him and demanded that he stop. Rhulk responded by removing one of its ribs in a display of dominance. Descending into the deep, he spoke to Zeta,
the worm
mother
had
of the worms,
rib,
and offered her a dark pact. The witness had need of her power and of her children's power. It would offer her children sustenance and survival in exchange for loyalty. Having few other options, and seeing the scope of Rhulk's power, it was clear that this was no bargain. It was a demand. And so Zeta accepted.
Yeah, he did a deep dive.
Thus, as he took their mother to the surface as both a source of power and a captive, the newly anointed children of Zeta, the so-called worm gods, named him the Subjugator. Rhulk took portions of the worms that would form into their larvae, the small worms that we now know from killing so many Hive, and with them, he enacted the greatest of the witness's plans. He left one larvae in Fundament's oceans, ensuring that it would wash up and be found by a leader of one of the Krill nations, the
Krill
next
nations
people that the traveler was meant to uplift. The leader who discovered the worm larvae was the king of the Osmium dynasty, and this dead worm larvae would quickly become his familiar, for it would whisper the witness's terrible lies to him.
Oh,
lies
cool.
of an oncoming horrific calamity. The old Osmium king would grow obsessed with this doom, which would supposedly come in the form of a great god wave that would wipe away all things. He neglected all other things in pursuit of this truth, even neglecting his 3 children.
Hold on.
That would wipe away all
God
things.
wave.
He neglected all other things in pursuit of this truth, even neglecting his 3 children, whose now dead names, Orash, Sathona, and Shiro, would be spoken only in Apocrypha, but whose true ascendant names would one day go on to bring terror to the universe. Only the eldest sibling, Orash, had his attention, and only when the 2 of them were studying the stars for proof of the approaching doom. The witness's plans for these siblings was thus. The most cunning of them would acquire her father's larvae upon her father's death. It would whisper to her of the same cataclysm written in the stars, and would tell her that to find salvation for her people, she would need to descend into the deep. These were the whispers told by the lying worm to Sathona. A simple lie, but one that would reshape the history of her people forever. All came to pass as the witness planned, and in time the siblings dove down into the deep. There, Sathona's older sibling, Orash, stood within the deepest part of Fundament's core and made a pact with the worm gods, Sita's 5 children. If the krill would consume their larvae, the worms would provide them with power and immortality that they had long sought, an escape to their short lives. and the power to claim their revenge. In exchange,
revenge?
the siblings and
to
any
who?
who consumed the larvae
Wait, revenge against who? Revenge against the fake, right?
of the worms would provide an eternal blood tithe and forever venerate the worm, their god. The Krill would forever have to commit acts of violence and devastation by following their nature. If they failed to do so, their worms would consume them, and they would perish. The bargain was accepted, and thus Urash, Sathona, and Shiro ceased to be. Thus Ulrix, Savathun, and Zivo Arath were born. Together, these three siblings would stand with the power of Zeta's 5 worm god children. They would be claimed by the Witness's powers before the Traveler had a chance to uplift them. Thus, the Traveler's plans were subverted. Ulrix, Savathun, and Zivo Arath would go on to unite the Krill peoples, now believing in the sword logic of the worms and in the promise of their own power. After cleansing the surface of Fundament, they would go on to scour its moons, destroying the Ammonite and butchering the Leviathan, all in the name of their newfound gods. A change came upon them as a people, and they would no longer be known as the Krill. As their new purpose of being the great winnowing blade was made clear, they would become known forevermore as the Hive. These would be some of the most fanatical servants of the sword logic. They would spread out across the universe, and beneath their blades, the Witness would see yet more worlds burn in pursuit of the Traveler. Though they would not necessarily know the Witness to be their true master.
They sabotage the Traveler.
Their purposes,
the Traveler's new
tools,
boyfriend.
Puppets created by Rhulk. But the Hive are a tale unto themselves. In their long and storied history, kings and queens and princes would rise and fall. Power would be gained, lost and forsaken. But always at the heart of all their machinations there would be a link to each of the 3 new Hive gods. Ulrix, the navigator and king of shapes. Savathun, the queen of lies and deception. And Zivo Arath, the Hive god of war. They would leave Fundament behind and look for new killing fields and killing logics.
Okay. What is this? The Hive. These are diamonds.
The tale of the Hive is one filled with lies. Built upon a lie told long ago by the Witness to Sathona.
Hive had cool buildings.
Now Savathun, the Witch Queen. Predominantly, though, we have but a single perspective to judge the millions of years worth of Hive history by.
Oh yeah, they were immortal,
the perspective
so...
of Ulrix, who would one day become Oryx, the Taken King. He recorded his version of events of the Hive's history, and we have seen it in a series of calcified fragments. We would one day know the knowledge contained in these fragments by a different name, the Books of Sorrow. These books may not be completely trustworthy, especially because they say nothing of Rhulk, the Witness, or the great lie that turned Sathona's mind to the deep and brought the young Krill siblings to the worm gods of Fundament. But they are our best and only record of the Hive's history, the history that is theirs to tell, as they were so often the victors. Hundreds of civilizations were snuffed out by the advancing armadas, the swarms of the Hive. Through their slaughter and through the sword logic, Ulrix, Savathun, and Zivo Arath would create throne worlds. Cysts in reality, pocket dimensions that defied the laws of the universe, nestled within the ascendant plane. Upon their deaths, the newly ascended Hive gods would be reborn in these throne worlds, and only within these throne worlds could they ever truly be killed. Thus, even in the face of fierce resistance, the 3 ruling siblings of the Hive and all those that would follow as ascendants thereafter would hold enough power to be nearly unassailable. They would be a scourge upon the universe, and for a time they looked invincible. That was until they faced the Ecumene, A starfaring
Acuminate.
empire made seemingly of a conglomeration of many races. One that
Wow.
might have some form of dark power of their own, though this is hard to confirm, as
Wait.
it is only spoken of in whispers
Is it
of lore
awoken?
recovered from one of the Black Pyramids. Thanks to the information obtained from the witness's own pyramid vessel, we do know that the Ecumenae had built a unity of minds, a forest constructed from the powers of darkness, but not one of evil, one of harmonious thought. Together, the Ecumenae were more than the Hive had ever faced, but they also had a helping hand, a Krill matriarch called Teox. She had been the original traitor who schemed to depose their father, the old Osmium king. She had been unable to kill those 3 siblings, and when they had been reborn into the Hive gods, she would flee the surface of Fundament, towards the Ammonite, and eventually towards deep space. She would find her way out into the reaches of the void, and would be picked up by the Ecumenae's forces. She gave them practically all the intelligence they would need to break the Hive's offensive. And break it the Ecumenae did. Their great fleets pushed the Hive back time after time, and they targeted and overkilled Aurix, Savathun, and Zivorath wherever they appeared on the battlefield.
Overkilled.
In time, they might have been successful, and might have wiped one of the witness's useful tools from the surface of the universe. But this success would prove to be fleeting at best. Convening within Aurix's throne world, the Hive gods discussed how to defeat the Ecumenae. This discussion led to a simple conclusion. One should claim the power of the others. Thus, Aurix killed Sivorath and Savathun, claiming their power by the logic of the sword. He used this power to confront one of his own gods, Akka, the Worm of Secrets, whom he killed in the name of knowledge. With this, Aurix learned of the secret of communing with what he termed to be the Deep. It is presumed that this led to the first meeting between Aurix and the witness, although in truth, it isn't clear who Aurix spoke to. There is a difference discernible to those that read the Books of Sorrow, an inconsistency between the approach of the witness and the approach of whatever being spoke to Aurix in the darkness.
Strange.
What is known is that Aurix emerged empowered. He had a command
There's
of
just
powers beyond the
no
comprehension
explanation of
the
that.
Ecumenae. Aurix was no more. He had returned as Oryx, the Taken King, and he had learned the power to abduct beings through portals into another place, where his enemies would be hollowed out by malicious forces and could be returned to the battlefield as thralls under Oryx's command. These were the first Taken, and though Oryx would be called the Taken King, there would be many who would come to wield them in time. The Witness, Rhulk, Savathun, Zivorath. Seemingly the only requirement to wield the Taken was a strong enough will to impose upon them, for the Taken are but husks, free of meaning and purpose until one is indwelled within them by a greater force. And thus, Oryx commanded them. He would unleash the Taken upon the Ecumenae, and his campaign would conjure back his siblings by embodying their different penchants. Where he was one of slaughter and war, he would summon back Zivorath, and in the Ecumenae's last moments, where he tricked them into a fool's gambit, he would embody his sister Savathun. Thus, all 3 Hive gods were returned, and with newfound powers, Oryx would go on to conquer more worlds.
Wait. He killed everybody, then he brought them back once he consumed their powers or something.
And would raise 4 wicked offspring. Crota the Light Eater, Halak the Unraveler, Uranuk the Weaver, and Nokris, whose name would be struck from the world's grave, and who would one day come to be known as a heretic. Through his children, Oryx would extend his own power, as all his children would tithe destruction to him. But they would be storied villains unto themselves. Uranuk and Urhalak were the fabled creators of the Oversoul and the Death Song, destructive tools within the Hive's arsenal that are still in use to this day.
Everybody's got
sons,
like
though, that would be the most
everybody's
storied,
got like layers to them. Like, oh, I'm playing 4D chess. I'm playing 5D chess. I'm playing 6D chess.
Productive. Nokris, who was weak of body but strong of mind, sought out hidden apocrypha that might grant him forgotten power. This led him to the worm gods, and in particular, Zol, who was weaker than his siblings and sought an alliance for the sake of his own survival. Zol promised Nokris a power that was forbidden to the Hive in exchange for loyalty, servitude, and his very heart. The power that Zol gifted Nokris was necromancy. One must understand, though death is the realm of the Hive, necromancy is a power that is beyond offensive to them. Death to the Hive is a sacred thing, indicative of one's place within the universe, of one's standing before the final perfect shape. Life is for the living, for the strong, and death is the fate of all those that are not strong enough to continue existing. To return a being to life after its true and final death was seen as a great heresy. This was not the same as the return of Savathun or Zivo Arath, who fed upon the bounties of trickery and war that Oryx had conjured. This was not the return of any ascendant who had tricked death.
Why not Oryx? Why not Oryx's resurrection of Savathun? It was like, I don't get it. hold on.
That Oryx had conjured. This was not the who fed upon the bounties of trickery and war.
What do you mean they fed upon the bounties of trickery and war? So, if they died to Oryx, then that means they weren't strong enough in that encounter. What does that mean?
Oryx had conjured. This was not the return of any ascendant who had tricked death and become strong enough to defy the laws of causality and build their own throne world. This was an abomination. The weak had been given a second chance. It was unacceptable. For this crime,
rules for thee, but not for me.
All memory of him would be stripped from the great.
Dying outside of the throne world doesn't count. Okay.
Archives of the Hive, known as the World's Grave. All record of him was destroyed, all trace of his story wiped clean. Only one statue, obstinate in its permanence, was left standing near the altar of Oryx. But the trace of Oryx's second son, aside from this, would all be gone. But Nokris would live on past his banishment. His chronicles would be told when we returned one day to Mars.
Mars?
Before. Of Oryx's first son, though, there would still be many chronicles. One day, as Crota was attempting to learn alongside his two sisters, he would unwittingly be tricked by Savathun and would allow the Vex to invade his father's throne world. A Vex mind by the name of Quaria would arrive to learn from the battle, and quickly observing the Hive, it deduced that within Oryx's domain, it was the sword logic and veneration of it that made one truly powerful. Thus, it established a foothold in the heart of the Hive's power by killing the Hive themselves. It had established itself within Oryx's throne by Oryx's own laws. But it was still a causal being, as all the Vex are, and when Oryx returned and blunted the offensive, it was Crota who would bear the blame. He took Crota and flung him into the Vex gate network, saying, "Come home glorious, or die forgotten." And to these words Crota would hold. He would become a legendary demon, and would lead his brood to slaughter countless worlds in his father's name, dedicating secret temples to him and learning much of the brutality that his father would impose upon the world, venerating it in time. But Crota's actions had exposed the weakness in Oryx's own throne world. In response, Oryx decided that the solution would be to combine his pocket dimension with a massive Hive vessel in real space. Thus, Oryx took the corpse of the worm god Akka and used its hide to create the baleful armoring that would encapsulate his throne world, the Dreadnought, a massive vessel whose construction was technically a paradox. When Oryx placed his throne world into the Dreadnought, it overlapped an ascendant plane pocket with real space. This place should not exist, but the power of Oryx was so great.
He put a planet in a spaceship. Sorry. He put a planet in a worm's corpse and made it into a spaceship.
He could indeed create a paradox that would be his great fortress. Oryx would then vengefully hunt down all those that were an affront to him, and would eventually find the Vex mind that had invaded his throne world. When Quarrier the Blade Transform fought Oryx, it stood no chance. He took it, and eventually would gift its taken remnants to Savathun. In this moment, Oryx should have been truly ascendant, for as he had invaded and found the Vex, it was amongst the fleet of the Harmony, the next who had been blessed by the Traveler's light. It had lied to their worlds, and now they stood within the gravity of a singularity, except it had been paused, and the worlds were living in a flourishing light. The Hive had found these worlds, and were soon to tear them down, root and stem. The Hive had become so powerful, Oryx in particular, that he would constrain the growth of all other things in the universe, including Savathun and Zivur Arath. And so, the three divided. Before, as a united force, they could have stood and destroyed the whole universe. But Savathun and Zivur Arath took their broods and became distant, needing space to grow and to change into something more powerful. Thus Oryx was alone, and his sisters were split from him. His swarm had made an indelible mark on the universe, and had helped to serve the Witness's purpose. They had pursued the Traveler and had destroyed those that stood in the Witness's path, but now Oryx was alone. Now all the Hive gods were alone. In this, they had shown their one possible weakness. But to the Witness itself, this was of little concern. The Hive were nothing but tools, after all, and they knew little of the true nature of the final shape as the Witness devised it. But they would soon serve a purpose in fulfilling its completion. It was in this way that the Hive and the Taken King would descend upon a distant world belonging to an alien people, a peaceful planet of artisans, weavers, dancers, and technologically inclined priests. It was here that they found the Elixni and their homeworld of Reese.
Elixni.
And like a great storm, they would ravage this place.
Wait, these are the Fallen.
Would once again be forced to flee.
Oh, finally, my boys.
The Hive's rampage across the universe.
Bro, the Traveler is like a drug dealer. It's like you can have such good performance enhancing drugs. Sorry, gotta go. The popos are here.
Would bring them into contact with many peoples and many worlds.
Sorry, I don't have a very good opinion of the Traveler, because the Traveler was like this weird kind of ball in Destiny 1. I always thought the Traveler is evil. But we'll see. Don't tell me.
Their swarms were vast, and as Oryx, Savathun, and Zivur Arath had all split, they had now covered different ground. Oryx's brood remained the most powerful arm, and their people would find another world seeded by the Traveler. These were the people of Reese, the Elixni, though humanity would one day come to know them first as the Fallen. Sources from the Elixni's own histories indicate that they held a small number of colonies throughout several celestial bodies. At the heart of their civilization, the jewel of their small empire that spanned a few stars was still set upon their home planet of Reese. They were a hardy but adaptable people. They would be sustained by a life-giving substance called ether. The exact chemical makeup of this compound is unfamiliar and unclear, but it can be created by a servitor from almost any remnant matter, meaning that the Elixni would be able to live on in almost any place so long as they had a servitor. However, in the skies of their homeworld Reese, this life-giving compound was everywhere.
It's like air.
It filled the very air and turned their sky a delicate shade of pink. It allowed the Elixni to grow to their true natural sizes. They would be between 7 and 10 feet tall. They had 6 limbs, 4 arms instead of just 2. They were dexterous, and they were nimble, but they could also stand tall with noble intent and philosophy, back before calamity arrived at their shores. The Elixni were in many ways a truly utopian people, one of the best examples of what the traveler could do in the right circumstances.
So sad.
Their society was communal in nature, and its people were organized into noble houses.
Communal in nature, but it had noble houses. Okay.
Known best not for their nationalities, but for their disciplines. For example, those that would one day be known as the House of Wolves were known in that time as gentle weavers, great artisans who would craft beautiful garments worn by all their people. When the traveler arrived and exalted their civilization like the thousands it had uplifted before, the Elixni developed, entering a rapturous age of peace and expansion. Beneath Reese's pink sky, the Elixni grew to exalt the traveler and all life-giving machines. They came to call it the Great Machine, and their study of its divine construction
Wait, it was a machine?
would lead to the rise of the so-called splicers. Whilst we would know them better as biohackers and body engineers, the principal concern of splicers was in fact the study of machinery itself. The Elixni believed that within all machines there was a spark of divine potential, and believed that within that divine spark, life itself could also be seen in some different, somewhat more intangible form. Eventually, the Elixni would see this belief morph into a worship of machinery itself, with them acting with great reverence to machines that they would construct later in their society, machines that they would need to keep them alive. Alas, even with the many noble houses, the Elixni were doomed to suffer the same fate as all those blessed by the traveler, for its bounty was followed by bitterness, and the black fleets in the service of the Witness would soon arrive. The exact details of the fall of the Elixni Empire, and in particular the fall of Reese, are not well known. Much like our own destruction, the event is known to the Elixni by another name, the Whirlwind. When ruin came to their system, they were crushed beneath the advancing hordes of the Witness's minions. Chief amongst these invaders would be the Hive. Oryx's swarm had arrived. His forces brought with them the same doom that they had brought to 1,000 worlds prior. To them, Reese was but another set of unbelievers to be delivered onto the jaws of death in the name of the sword logic. The houses mustered in a defense of their homeworld, believing that in spite of all the darkness, fate might be on their side. But tragically, it was not. Elixni legends tell of the moment where the defense of their world was lost, when one of the great leaders that rallied them, Chelchis, the Kell of the House of Stone, stood before them all and cried, "Where is the great machine?" For it was in this moment that the course of history repeated itself once more, and the traveler began to flee Reese, away from the
traveler
forces
needs to
of the
get smacked
Witness.
as hell.
In that moment, seeing that it had abandoned their people and that Reese was lost, many would lose hope, many would be scarred forever, many would remember. For scribes like Varix, it would represent the greatest tragedy that his people had ever seen. For warriors
following you
like
can talk
Aramis,
to.
it represented a betrayal so bitter and so evil that it would create hatred lasting for thousands of years. But for one amongst their number, it created a moment of determination that defined an entire people. Seeing that the traveler, the great machine, had abandoned their people, and that Rhys was lost, the Kell of the house that would one day be known as the House of Devils told his forces to break off from the engaging attackers. He ordered his ship to pursue the traveler with all haste, and all catchers under his command were to follow this order. This Kell, who would one day claim the name of Achillux, abandoned all those houses who could not make war.
I remember this guy.
Of the great machine, many others followed him.
Yeah, it's by
Thousands of Elixni on thousands of catchers would begin the long exodus from Rhys, chasing the traveler, following Achalux's banner. An exodus that would come to be known as the Long Drift. Some houses gathered in groups of catchers, some followed the trail of the great machine alone. But no matter what, it would be a time of terrible hardship. Having left their homeworld behind, the Elixni had little of the life-giving substance known as ether to consume.
Oh.
They needed to construct new machines to create ether synthetically, and so the servitors were created. They were made spherical in shape, perhaps to venerate the traveler. Whilst the servitors could make ether out of any abandoned matter that was discovered, the scarcity of resources in deep space led to the devolution of Elixni society. The once noble people became pirates, scavengers, and warlords. Barbaric practices became commonplace. There was not enough ether to go around. Those few that could get enough were the leaders of the houses, because they were strong. They claimed the position of Kells, and those amongst them of religious inclinations would commune with the servitors, and thus the triad of power within each house was born: the Kells, the Archons, and the servitors. A new hierarchy had been born from the broken remains of the old. Where before the Elixni had grown tall, now the Kells would become monstrous in size as they consumed more than their fair share of ether to remain stronger still. With their utterly monstrous strength, there was less chance of them being challenged by rivals. For most, though, rationing would be the way of their life. Those without sufficient ether remained small, stunted, and weak. Worst of all, though, the punishments doled out by those who ruled became harsh to the point of being almost unspeakable. It is likely that on the Long Drift, the barbaric practice of severing Elixni's lower arms became a commonplace punishment for failure.
Oh, that's why they
known as docking.
I see.
And many who were docked were turned into dregs, or wretches, the lowest possible rung of Elixni society. Thus it was that the Elixni would pursue the traveler, and become less of a people than their history would allow them to remember. The once noble banners of their houses would be cannibalized into symbols of dominance and declarations of territory. They would no longer be the utopian people that had grown up beneath the great machine. The damage to their societal fabric was so great that it would permeate through generations. There would be newborn Elixni, but they would mostly be born in a time where few of them would remember the Whirlwind or Rhys. They had no home to call their own. It would be nothing more than a passing legend, a dream. It came to the point that when humanity named them Fallen as a common slur and reference to their status as a people abandoned
Fallen is such a cool name, but it's an awful name.
Elixni did not completely reject the notion. They were a lost people, a tragic tale, a diaspora of vessels and cultures and long-lived memories that, should the universe be so harsh, could have been snuffed out in an instant.
Hey, it's a slur.
They would continue onwards and would follow the trail of the traveler to the next system that it had blessed. That would take some time, and there were other civilizations who would make their way
call barracks of Elixni
for reasons other than vengeance and reclamation. There were those that would make their way to our shores in the name of empire and conquest, and they too would be making moves, even though the traveler and the witness had never laid eyes on them.
Damn, you're right. You're right. The witness didn't even try to like uplift them into like evil races. They were just like, you guys are dying. Tour battle. So we weren't even the next on the travelers list. That was Tor Battle. It's not Earth? The Cabal.
Whilst many civilizations throughout the universe would be uplifted by the Traveler, there were some that made their own way into the stars without divine intervention or assistance from a greater being. One such people was found on the distant and rugged world of Tora Bartle. They were known as the Cabal, and their society was one ruled by might. In their earliest years, mighty warlords would roam their world, claiming the right to territory by conquest and combat. Even in the days when they would break out into the stars, the Cabal's great warlords would still challenge each other for supremacy in the rights of their old ways. It is perhaps then unsurprising that one of the oldest legends of the Cabal is one that concerns their first emperor, a mythical figure called Acreus. The Cabal once saw the sun and desired it for themselves. So they climbed a great mountain to claim it. But before they could reach the sun to claim it, a great
Hive just straight up killing the Cabal in their video.
Mighty and worthy warriors clashed against the beast, scoring small and seemingly insignificant blows against it, until one day Acreus came and struck the killing blow. He ascended to claim the sun and was crowned as the first emperor of the Cabal. This legend shows their lack of subtlety as a people, but it also has been a literal pretext for conquest. The Cabal believe themselves to be righteous rulers in this universe, and they believe that it is so because they are mightier than their foes. The sun is theirs to claim because they are strong enough, and so they claim it.
What do you call it? The mandate of the sun.
The emperors of the Cabal have been very real, and across their history,
they were real. Oh my, real and based.
They laid claim to dozens of worlds. Some of these worlds were occupied by peoples that would be folded into the Cabal Empire. The Sinew, the Karga Clips, the Arkborn, the Scions, all of them would have at some point been client races of the Cabal of Tora Bartle, and would be pushed into slavery and servitude of their emperors. The history of the Cabal is a long one, full of many conquests made by tyrants, but none of these despots and warlords have been more consequential than one who changed the fabric of their society so much that it led to his own downfall. His name was Emperor Callus. While he was emperor, he was not truly powerful. In the time when his reign began, he would need to upend institutions for it to truly flourish. As emperor, he served alongside other powerful bodies that governed much of Tora Bartle's strength. Their people were ruled by a senate, and their military by a praetorate. The old military traditions of the Cabal were maintained, but Callus was different. He did not care for them. He was content with the idea of conquest, but he was not a martial Cabal. He sought song and beauty and pleasure in all things, and the praetorate stood in the way of this. The Senate stood in the way. So Callus created a populist revolution to overthrow them both, so that he might claim ultimate authority over his own empire. Callus changed the Cabal people fundamentally when he rose to power. His populism saw the warlike ways of the Cabal relegated in favor of a bountiful and hedonistic culture. Even at his coronation, the nature of his rule was made clear, as he had the desert sands of Tora Bartle cleansed.
He was just having a nice time.
His army of minions remove every single offending stone or plant that might stand
Okay, never mind. He's OCD.
And for his entire royal court to be recreated in the sands of Tora Bartle's deserts.
Is this your first time here, tall dude?
He took upon his coronation itself, though, as the one true ruler of the Cabal. In the splendor of his perfectly recreated royal court, Callus had the old consul of the Praetorate brought
why did he remove all the gold from his armor?
Before him, stripped of rank and title, and even clothing. Callus castrated the Cabal consul and banished him into the wastelands of Torabatal, saying but a single word to him: run. This was an example
Callus
of the
kinda
ruthlessness
sucks.
with which Callus governed his imperial
What do you mean ruthlessness? He was just hedonistic.
domain. He was benevolent and generous one moment, vengeful and petty the next.
Okay.
He treated the old Cabal ways with contempt and uplifted new celebrations of culture and decadence. But behind the new emperor's magnificent opulence, there was a deep sadness. This sadness was born of a love that he had lost. His original lover had left him in a time of great...
Oh my god. Everybody in this fucking game is like so torn about their loved girl. Everybody like looking for the girl in this game.
sorrow. Callus knew that he had broken things between them, and that despite
Like they said, oh, this time the traveler is not involved.
loving her,
And then there's another
their
girl.
relationship had been damaged beyond repair, all thanks to his own selfish actions.
That's so crazy.
But there was one spark of that relationship that still remained, one remnant of his old flame that he clung to. Together, they had created an heir to the Cabal Empire. Her name would be Keitel. As she grew in his new Cabal Empire, she perhaps did not first comprehend the changes to her people's proud ways. She did not originally hate her father, though it would not take long for her to have good reason to do so. One day, her father doted on her as he had done before. He had given her some of the most revered gifts that a Cabal could receive, but today he had surpassed even himself. He gifted his daughter a war beast. These war beasts in Cabal culture are the most extreme example of what it's like for a human being to own and lovingly care for a dog. They are venerated beyond exception and are some of the most prized companion animals that a Cabal can have. Keitel named her war beast Milos and loved it dearly beyond anything else in the world. Callus saw Keitel's love for the war beast and in his inconceivable cruelty and jealousy,
he got jealous of the dog.
Milos. He believed that she loved her own war beast more than she loved him. And so Callus had Milos killed.
Jesus.
He could not stand the idea of his daughter loving even a pet more than him. This moment changed.
Yeah, this guy sucks. Callus sucks.
Set her down a path that would determine the course of her life forever. She now held a burning hatred for her father that was so deep in the kernel of her heart that it would never be dislodged. And she was certainly not alone. There were many within Callus's empire that saw him with a degree of discontent. Keitel was but one of them. The Emperor's old bodyguard, Lictor Sheatet, the Evocate General and Primus of all his legions, Amunarath, the free-born scion dreamer known as Otzot, the master of festivals, Moli Imoli.
Wait, you say everybody.
All of them harbored ill intent for the Emperor. But it was under the leadership of two Cabal that these malcontent actors would be aligned in purpose and turned into conspirators. The former consul that Callus had banished into the desert, and his chosen champion,
this
the rising
guy.
gladiatorial leader that had emerged victorious in the fighting pits, the ghost Primus of the Red Legion, Gaul. These conspirators joined together and plotted to overthrow Callus, a plot that would come to be known as the Midnight Coup. Each of them would play their own part in his downfall, but it was Keitel who spelled his ultimate doom. As the Midnight Coup was being enacted, Callus fled for his throne room. He sought a relic of the emperors of old, a shard of bone taken from a wish dragon. The remains of these mythical creatures were known to grant desires to those that held them. With the shard in hand, Callus might be able to maintain his hold on power if only he wished for it. But when he arrived, Keitel was already present in the throne room. She held the shard of wish dragon bone in her hand, knowing that she held her father's salvation. Keitel addressed him, saying, "Father, I will not be weak." She crushed the bone in her gauntlet, and with it, sealed Callus's fate. He was escorted hurriedly through the streets of the Cabal capital, his utterly massive entourage in tow. All traces of the old emperor, save for those that were part of his coup, would be scrubbed from the imperial hierarchy. They were all forced to march aboard a Cabal vessel known as the Leviathan, and Callus was forced into exile. The navigation controls for this great vessel were sabotaged, and the emperor was left to drift into uncharted space. On Toro Bartle, the consul and Gaul seized power and began a new era for the Cabal. The former primus of the Red Legion would be declared as the very first and only dominus of the Cabal, an emperor and military dictator.
This was
his power over the empire would
we're
be
close to
absolute,
Destiny 1,
and
right?
the primus of all legions, Amuna Rath, and the heir apparent to the imperial throne, Keitel, at his side. His authority was unchallenged. Emperor Callus would wallow in pity and sorrow for a time aboard the Leviathan. His cohort of scribes recorded that there was nothing that could be done to break him from his misery. No form of entertainment, no food, no pleasure would rouse him from this sorrow. The exact amount of time the Emperor spent like this is not recorded, but what eventually broke him from his
He's so ugly.
would be one day, as the Leviathan sailed through the uncharted void of space, it encountered strange interference. The nature of this interference would not be known at first.
Ooh.
Based on our explorations of similar events, and based on Callus's own recollections, it is almost certain that he encountered the Black Fleet. What he would come to know as the Black Edge. He would see the Witness. The pocket of astral disruption that they found themselves in caused massive quakes throughout the Leviathan, and Callus put on an environmental suit to see what had befallen the vessel from its own hull. Out on the exterior of the Leviathan, Callus beheld that thing that he would be defined by for the rest of his life. He would see the Witness, and it told Callus that there was to be an end to all things, and that the universe would end by its glorious design, and that he was to be its herald. After 12 hours and numerous terrible quakes, Callus returned inside with a look of mania in his eyes. He at first openly proclaimed the doom
The
of
Witness
the universe,
always horrifying.
and then, with a sigh of what seemed to be relief, he welcomed it. As he said at the time, when nothing matters, what's left? Joy, comfort, freedom, the true freedom of pursuing pleasure for pleasure's sake, because it pleases you, because you desire it. I knew this during my rule, and I'd forgotten it during my exile. I shall not forget it again. Thus Callus returned to his hedonistic ways, with a renewed vigor and a new mission. He would follow the directions of this terrible voice, and would be its herald. At first, he would also aim to acquire his revenge against those that had wronged him. To this end, the Leviathan's navigation systems were returned to functioning order, and the vessel charted its way back to known space. Callus would start to actively employ some of his deadliest servants in the task of seeking revenge, his shadows. Across the many worlds that had been conquered by the Emperor of the Cabal, he had found individuals of incredible martial skill. They were brought to Callus, contained in glorious armor, embellished with golden heraldry, and offered all that their hearts desired in exchange for servitude unending. Callus would send his shadows after the conspirators and managed to...
Why do they look almost human?
Callus would send his shadows after the...
Like, these guys look very human.
...conspirators and managed to successfully hunt down the Master of Ceremonies, Callus's former bodyguard, and a favored tea merchant that he had once believed to have served Gaul's command staff. These were but the first attempted assassinations, and upon Gaul and Keitel, there would be many. For his daughter in particular, he would send shadows with a specific weapon in hand, a blade that had been passed down from generation to generation, the Heart Shadow. Forged from a rare metal called enactine, this weapon could not be broken. It would always reform to its original shape if the shard of it was exposed to psionic energy, and the memory of what it had been like. The weapon was an heirloom passed through the women of Callus's line, and he had made sure that Keitel would eventually receive the weapon one way or another. His assassins attempted to take her life time and time again, and each time the mighty heir apparent would leave the blade shattered, ready to be reforged by Callus once again. In a strange way, this is how they kept in touch. Callus and Keitel would not communicate directly, but every time a new assassin came wielding the blade, Keitel would shatter it. In these reflections of each other's choices, did Keitel and Callus know of each other's continued existence? It was the only way to gauge each other's strength and intention. Assassins would be sent to kill Gaul and the consul, but likewise they would fail. The new ruler of the Cabal had set his sights on further horizons. He had remilitarized the culture of Tora Bartel, and had sent out many of the scout legions of the Empire to systems at the far reaches of Cabal
Destiny music.
Each
that's
sent
Ari.
a banner of war with a promise. Without victory, they would be exiled and could not return home.
You and Mars? Oh, is it Mars?
Their way through the universe and would one day find themselves on the route to Sol. 5 scout legions and an elite group of Scion Flayers would one day land upon the shores of Sol's planets. But just as the Vex and Hive and Elixni would, it would take them time. Before any of them arrived in Sol, came an omen of prosperity and doom.
Oh, here we go.
That would change the course of human history for all time and all people. Here is where humanity's part in this story begins. And it starts with the arrival of the Traveler.
Oh, I get shivers. Ah, this music. Oh. It's in Mars. Oh, this is the opening song. It's nice. The Traveler. Oh, it's so cool.
At last, our tale turns to humanity, who at the time were a primitive civilization, but even by the standards of most, we had accomplished a few marvels in our time. The creation of human
This isn't
culture
even the
and
beginning of the game.
language, the splitting of the atom, the journey of a few brave souls into space. But it was in the early 2010s that the world held its breath as a signal was detected from our closest planetary neighbor of Mars. Something remarkable was happening. The world was changing, and perhaps most shockingly of all, it did not seem to be a natural phenomenon. The events taking place on Mars defied scientific explanation.
Was it getting terraformed?
Hastily, the 3 greatest powers on Earth at the time assembled a joint task force. The United States of America, Russian Federation, and People's Republic of China joined forces to send an astronaut, taikonaut, and cosmonaut to Mars to investigate. The mission would be known originally as Project Catamaran, but it would be remembered in history as Ares 1. And so it was that on a fateful day in the year of 2014, the explorers Mielova, Chow, and Hardy became the first humans to step out onto the surface of another planet. They were unsure of what they might find when they arrived, and whilst all hoped for a peaceful encounter, they had been armed in case of a hostile event. Across mountainous terrain and through uncharacteristic Martian winds, they trekked toward the signal's source, anticipation building with their every step.
Oh,
As
shit.
they crested the ridge, they saw it. The source of the signal and the reason for the disturbances. Together they beheld the entity that would change the fate of humanity forever. The Traveler.
Okay, I was shitting on the Traveler earlier, but like when you actually it's our turn to have the Traveler.
Beneath its radiant splendor, they bore witness to the first Martian rains in human history and saw life
I can
return
fix
to the
her.
red planet. But this was not simply the greatest discovery in all of human history. It was the start of a time of great prosperity for all the people of Earth, just like
Lady
it had been
in White,
for so many civilizations before. This time would be known to us as the Golden Age. Like the thousands that had come before us, the Traveler gifted humanity with the light's bounty of creation. The changes to humanity were apparent almost immediately. The nations of Earth and all its peoples entered a time of utopian peace and prosperity, with the bounty of the Traveler effectively doing away with all forms of war and prejudice. The lifespan of the average human tripled.
Oh, I remember that.
We did not grow frail in our old age. Those at the age of 90 were considered relatively young and highly capable.
Damn.
It is recorded that back in the days of the Golden Age, there were humans born with a remarkable gift. They were able to hear the voice of the Traveler through involuntary dreams and sudden premonitions. They were known as the Dreamers, and would one day come to be known as Speakers, and their words were observed with reverence and respect. We expanded out into the system of Sol and established marvelous colonies, an endeavor made easier by the Traveler, which had begun to terraform our worlds into hospitable planets. Mercury became a garden world and the breadbasket of the system.
I didn't even know that.
Venus turned into a
I remember
planet
this.
of jungles and rivers.
I remember
Titan
Venus.
was given a breathable
I remember
atmosphere
Titan.
alongside its oceans of methane. Humanity expanded out to all these places and more as the Traveler changed the worlds around us from hellscapes into havens. Great cities rose from these formerly inhospitable places, from the marvels of the arcologies of Titan to the spires of the Martian city of Freehold. Humanity took root and flourished in Sol. Many institutions grew on to take power, the most renowned of them being the thriving new technology firms and research groups that had set up throughout the system. There was the Ishtar Collective, who were primarily based on Venus, where they had discovered the Vex ruins that predated humanity by billions of years. Their study of the Vex would bring about the creation of technological marvels and new understandings all in their own right. Then, there was probably the most infamous corporation to ever have existed in the Golden Age, whose legacy can be found scattered across the system to this day, the Clovis Bray Corporation. Named after its less than humble creator, Clovis Bray I, it was responsible for starting entire research and development colonies, as well as sponsoring scientific innovation in countless areas from artificial intelligence to artificial personhood to aerospace defense. The remnants of Clovis Bray facilities can still be found across Sol, from Earth to the Moon to Mars, and even on some distant Jovian moons. They were known to work in collaboration with certain national governments as well, and held a great deal of power and influence across all of humanity. But perhaps the greatest legacy of humanity's Golden Age was our technology. In the Golden Age, we saw the rise of new creations that might have seemed indistinguishable from even magic to those living back in the early 21st century. Humanity quickly developed spacefaring craft capable of remarkable feats of transportation, including the first near-light-speed jump drives.
Near-light-speed.
There was also the creation of Glimmer. Programmable matter that could be turned into almost anything imaginable.
You watched this 10
times? In combination with the correct energy sources and the correct matter forge.
Crazy.
In a very similar vein, but on a grander scale, Willa Bray, one of Clovis's granddaughters, was a leading pioneer on a project known as Siva. This was a nanite technology that could be commanded to construct and create anything conceivable so long as it was given the correct inputs and control. The speed with which these nanites could construct something from seemingly nothing was revolutionary. There are some who speculate that the great cities of the Golden Age colonies were built so quickly thanks partly to this technology. It could even convert surrounding matter into more Siva, allowing it to replicate quickly. It was intended to be used in deep space colonization missions as well, to allow for the creation of anything from basic habitation structures to whole colonies in next to no time at all. There was also the discovery of a new, more pure state of matter, engram.
There we go.
Matter, information and
Loot box
could be stored and
my favorite state of
with
matter.
Perfect precision, and whilst it would decay over time, engrams became as reasonable a means to store data as any other.
Let's go, loot box, baby.
Data stores, and can still often be found in the wild, decrypted, and materialized into whatever is contained within, as long as you have the appropriate skill of cryptoarchaeology. But undoubtedly, there were two inventions within the Golden Age that were more remarkable than any others: the Exos and the Warmind. Exos were merely theoretical for a long time. The idea was a simple one: a human consciousness stored digitally on a mechanical body, thus allowing the person to live on with immortality inside their mechanical shell. It became the obsession of Clovis Bray I, who desired immortality and believed that he would be the one to guide humanity into a second age of man, where they would surpass even the Traveler. Exominds had been created before in the Golden Age by others, but they had universally failed, falling prey to fundamental flaws that saw the spark of the human mind dim and go out every time. The first hint to the secret of true Exos was discovered on the Moon. A project under the watchful eye of Clovis's grandson, Alton Bray, had uncovered something terrible but powerful. The so-called K1 project had uncovered an artifact buried on the Moon. It was known as the Anomaly.
Bro, every time they have a name for something in Destiny is like the Fallen, the Traveler, the Witness, the Anomaly, the Awoken, the Noun.
And had
it's always like that.
Properties, but chief amongst them was a series of hallucinations and nightmares suffered by the crew. Clovis visited the site, and whilst others experienced hallucinations, he heard something entirely different. A voice that guided him to the distant moon of Europa, promising in his dreams that he would discover the secret to his ascension, his entire purpose and reason for creating the Exos. There, Clovis discovered what he would call clarity control. A statue of a tall, veiled figure beneath the moon's icy crust. This would be the first of many statues of the darkness that we would find, always veiled, always black as obsidian, and always brimming with dark power. Thanks to the visions he had received, he also divined that he would need to construct a Vex Gate.
A Vex Gate?
These two factors was key to the Exos' creation. Vex Radiolarian fluid, or mind fluid, exposed to the influence of the veiled statue, was the key to the creation of a stable Exo mind fluid. At a site that would be known as the Deepstone Crypt, a mass of Exos would emerge and begin to trickle down into human society at large.
Wait. What did they do? Did they construct a Vex Gate, then harvested the Vex to create our own mechs?
Little did Clovis know that the K1 artifact and clarity control were fueled by darkness, and that Clovis might have played into the grander designs of agents beyond his comprehension. The Warmind was the other invention of Clovis Bray.
Oh, this is fucking crazy. They straight up killed the robots, then used the robots for our own robots. So what the hell?
That might have defined the Golden Age. But whilst his granddaughter Elsie Bray would have been close to the Exo project, it was Anna Bray who was close to this one. The Warmind was a creation that would eventually supersede Clovis Bray himself, but it would be inaccurate to call the Warmind simply an AI. The Warmind was a superintelligence refined over years and given an unfathomable amount of processing power.
Did we save the Warmind?
It is a superintelligence capable of far more than any administrative or defensive intelligence. Its original template had been derived from the Ares 1 mission, where it was a smaller AI that had simply been nicknamed R. It would now be given a new name under Clovis Bray and his granddaughter Anastasia Bray. It would bear the name Rasputin. Rasputin's systems were so vast that he would sometimes split himself into different sub-minds.
We saved him 3 times and he died. Okay.
In order to partition different tasks into different working groups. In the Age of the Guardians, this even gave rise to the theory that there were many great war minds, of which Rasputin was the greatest. Charlemagne Malahiyati, Martel, all of these ancient names that were once thought to be great virtual defenders working in parallel under Primes inter pares were in fact just parts of the singular warmind Rasputin. But even with this in mind, they had their own thoughts and perspectives, and they would name Rasputin according to his influence. They gave him the moniker of the Tyrant.
The Tyrant?
Rasputin's mandate as the warmind was simple. His purpose was to be humanity's shield, protecting us from threats to our existence that might come from the stars. He was linked in with almost every possible piece of infrastructure to assist him with this goal. Every vessel, every satellite, every automated weapon system.
Oh.
They could have all been commandeered by the warmind at a moment's notice should an emergency arise. Rasputin even employed a small private army of loyal human and exo forces known as Seraphs. Where manual intervention was required, they represented the long arm of the Tyrant's will. Whilst he lacked any paracausal abilities himself, he still represented one of the most advanced intelligences ever created across the whole of existence, as evidenced by a moment where his significant computational power was enough to overpower even a Vex and save an entire Ishtar Collective research team. With this power, Rasputin was capable of
Bro, he literally thought the Vex out of existence.
Devising solutions to problems before they ever truly arose. More often than not, this would lead to the creation of remarkable weapons created through independent sub-protocols of his own design. This could be anything from traditional small arms, such as was made in the Icalos program, or full-scale planetary defense systems. The greatest of these weapons was undoubtedly the Warsat network, which was launched continually from Mars and which spread throughout the system. Each independent Warsat held various sensors and communication systems, and was also armed with a variety of ordnance packages. Clovis Bray I would at one point plan on using these weapons packages to do the unthinkable. In his hubris, Clovis believed that he could replace the Traveler with Rasputin, and so he engineered the possibility for Rasputin to strike down the mysterious sphere. A protocol called Abhorrent Imperative was inserted into the Warmind's code, allowing him the option to do just this, should the Traveler abandon humanity. This could have led to disaster, but luckily, Clovis Bray wasn't the only one working on the Warmind. His granddaughter, Anastasia, was concerned with Rasputin's capacity to understand the worth of humanity. If Clovis Bray gave Rasputin his mind, then it would be fair to say that Anastasia Bray gave him his soul. It was thanks to her many lessons that Rasputin would lock Clovis out of his systems, realizing that Abhorrent Imperative was something that he should probably never use. Whilst the protocol remained intact, it would never be used by Rasputin. Even if Clovis had tried to force him to use it, it would have failed. Rasputin's love of human culture would be reflected even to the last of his dying moments. If you ventured into his bunkers, every once in a while you could hear Tchaikovsky playing in the background. With all of humanity's newfound prosperity and its security all but guaranteed by the Warmind, we set our sights further afield. This was the time in which a colonization program known as the Exodus program was conceived of. Dozens of massive colony ships were constructed, each packed with colonists and shipboard systems that would propel humanity to the stars beyond Sol. The Exodus vessels were designated by color, such as Exodus Red, Exodus Blue, Exodus Indigo, and Exodus Black. Under the supervision of General Chen Lanshu, these vessels were assembled and launched from the old Cosmodrome in Baikonur, Kazakhstan. And negotiations with Clovis Bray were even undertaken to see Siva nanites placed aboard each vessel to assist with colonization efforts, or defense should the need arise. The Golden Age and all of its prosperity had been a great boon to humanity, but as history has shown us, this time of peace was not to last. There were signs that it would one day come to an end, but most unfortunately, they were almost universally ignored by humanity. And even as Rasputin quickly moved to counter the oncoming threat, it was readily apparent that there was little that could be done to halt the coming storm. Humanity, like so many before, would experience an apocalypse that was all too familiar to those blessed with the Traveler's light. The forces of the Witness were on the march, and the Black Fleet loomed on the edges of our system. We would be powerless to stop what happened next. The end of the Golden Age had finally come. The collapse had begun.
Earth. The Traveler moved to Earth.
Though humanity had a few moments at which there were warning signs hinting towards the nature of the coming collapse, and even some direct warnings themselves, many times they were tragically ignored, pushed to the side due to hubris, or simply a lack of believing that the Golden Age could ever end. After all, it was so easy to believe that humanity would never be toppled from the height of its power. But just like every civilization before, topple we did. And this time the whole of the system would be plunged into terrible darkness, like so many others. Though the collapse might have happened quickly, it was not a single moment in time that turned the marvels of our Golden Age from splendor to ash. There were warning signs long before this, and the months over which the collapse seemingly took place would have been brutal, playing host to countless tragedies. But our warnings would begin on Titan. The proto-worm god Asa, sole survivor of Fundament, had made her home in the methane ocean's viscous depths. There she had stayed alone for eons, until the Traveler arrived and the new Pacifica arcology was founded on the ocean surface above. A subsurface research team eventually found Asa, and she reached out to them with harmonious psychic resonance. She wished for friendship to break the loneliness that she had felt for so many eons, but she also uttered dreadful warnings. The marine xenobiologists who studied Asa heard her warnings and even brought them to their superiors. But alas, the ancient warning of the single being that might have told them of the Witness fell on deaf ears.
Damn.
Thus, our first chance to avert complete disaster was scuppered. On Mars, there was another opportunity. A joint venture between the Clovis Bray Corporation and the Ishtar Collective had borne significant fruit and would be the next avenue by which we might have learned of the oncoming calamity and done something about it. By utilizing Vex technology discovered on Venus and in cooperation with Clovis Bray, a new AI was created. It was not as powerful as Rasputin, but it was still worthy of great respect. Her name was Soteria, but she was also known by another designation, the Augur Mind. The Vex technology at the heart of Soteria's construction allowed her to be free of the Vex Collective, whilst retaining their remarkable computational and simulation abilities. In particular, the acquired Vex ability to simulate the future with uncanny degrees of accuracy was what Soteria had maintained. The Vex commonly used this power to chart a course to the end state of the universe, where they will be the only remaining form of life that will survive uncontested. Soteria used this technology to chart safe routes for colonial expeditions out beyond even the reaches of the Milky Way. One day, the fabled Ishtar Collective leader, known as Maya Sundaresh, removed Soteria from suspension and asked her to run a few tests, namely to chart safe courses for colonial echopods heading from Sol to the Andromeda Galaxy. Soteria initially calculated over 300 preliminary routes. As she calculated those routes in real time, her advanced algorithms recalculated, first down from 300 to 27.
Damn.
And then, moments later, to just 2. These real-time calculations were due to the presence of unknown anomalous variables that presented a near 100% chance of total casualties on all colonial flights. Soteria didn't know it at the time, but she had just simulated and discovered the Black Fleet, and had realized that it was on its way.
Cool.
Any potential colonial flights that might escape had a narrow window in which they would need to do so, for the fleet was getting closer to Sol with every second. Soteria shepherded this data to Rasputin on a private communications band, and classified the threat under the subtext code of Rasputin's own designation known as Egyptian, a threat level used to define a force that defied all causal explanation and that might be capable of the extinction-level threat that Rasputin was always working to counter. Rasputin agreed with the assessment and prepared for all-out war in the system. Soteria, for her part, was responsible for at least one attempt to save the lives of what human colonists were prepared to go beyond Sol. She prepared emergency launches for the fleet of colonial echo pods at her disposal and attempted to send them out in a desperate gambit to avoid the oncoming storm. Clovis Bray saw her actions and immediately reprimanded her.
Bro, why is Clovis Bray socks?
The echo pods were returned to their docking posts, and Soteria was confined to an AI pillory bunker on Mars, a prison for an artificial intelligence.
Crazy.
A prison that was originally meant for the warmind Rasputin.
What?
This was a punishment for her defiance.
Why did he even make...
In a moment of desperation, Soteria attempted one last thing. She tried to create a submind, sending out a fragment of herself as data reaching into space, a last-ditch effort to save herself and warn humanity. But it would be too little too late. And even with Rasputin having been warned, there was nothing that could be done to stop the greatest catastrophe in human history. We had been given 2 chances to heed the warnings of the oncoming collapse. Through a combination of hubris, inaction, and misunderstanding.
Damn, that looks so cool
we had
though.
wasted them. And so the Black Fleet arrived. So the collapse began. So the Witnesses' forces began to put Sol to the torch. The first public alerts that something had gone wrong came from Rasputin. He sounded general evacuation orders across the outer colonies. Millions of people from Titan to Mars prepared to leave. On distant Exodus program vessels, new orders were relayed to ship captains. They were to make an about-turn and use their defensive systems as orbital artillery within Sol. These orders were briefly questioned, but most would follow them. Not all, though. And even if they had all followed them, it was not going to be enough. The next sign came to be the most distressing of them all. The Traveler, which had only partially conducted the terraforming of Jupiter's volcanic moon of Io, was on the move once more.
Oh boy.
This was not unheard of. The Traveler would routinely move from planetoid to planetoid, terraforming them for humanity to colonize. But this time, its work was incomplete, and it wasn't heading for a new patch of ground to transform. It was heading directly for Earth. The reason for this retreat was unknown to humanity at the time, but it was likely the same reason for the Traveler's retreat time and time again.
Damn, that's beautiful.
Forces of darkness had arrived. The broods of the Hive had arrived. The Black Fleet had arrived.
Oh wait, the Traveler protects us this time.
Its advance across Sol was a tide of death, in some ways quite literally. Whilst those in the many colony ships that reached the outer system were wiped out almost universally by gravitational weapons from the Black Fleet, nowhere was there a more dramatic end than on Titan, where the Black Fleet artificially altered the moon's gravity to create a 150-foot-high wave, a super tsunami that spread out across the oceans of Titan and shattered the arcologies beneath a torrent of methane. The Warmind fought back against the Witnesses' fleet, but even with all its power, there was nothing it could do. The vessels of the Black Fleet had technology and paracausal power beyond anything the Warmind could have prepared for, including fields that teleported weapons away into a separate pocket of dimension just before they could impact the vessel. Any rounds fired at a pyramid ship, even to this day, experienced this same phenomenon. The Warmind struggled and buckled against the Black Fleet, and it was seemingly left with little choice. In a moment of desperation, realizing there was only one way it could survive, Rasputin did the unthinkable. Rasputin shrugged off his duties, disconnecting himself from his planetary network and splitting himself into dozens of disparate fragments in hundreds of installations. In an act that he would live to regret more than any other on any day, Rasputin abandoned humanity to their fate and chose to live to fight in the future. In this moment, as the forces of the Witness gathered, other interlopers were making their moves. The exiled Hive Prince Noctis and his worm god patron Zol had decided that they would descend upon Sol and planned to claim the planet of Mars for themselves. They descended upon Hellas Basin, where the Warmind's core was located. In response to these interlopers, Rasputin could do something. They were not the Black Fleet, and despite their power being immense, Rasputin was able to respond. Against these interlopers, Rasputin deployed a defense system that flash froze Noctis, Zol, and the entire brood of Hive that had followed in their wake. Such an action would not only have the effect of creating an artificial ice cap on Mars, but it also suspended the Warmind, Worm God, and Hive Prince in stasis. None of them would be able to take part in the battles ahead, and only when the ice caps again began to thaw hundreds of years later would this new threat re-emerge once more. At the heart of the collapse, humanity would suffer without Rasputin. But even if he had died in their defense, it would have made no difference. Humanity would die in their untold billions. The forces of the Witness were unleashed upon the worlds of Sol. Survivors from the Black Armory recall some of the moments of the Great Calamity on Earth, where the Witness's forces cut down those in front of them that could not fight back, without mercy or remorse, where the Black Fleet destroyed all the satellites above in Earth's low orbit as a titanic show of their power, when a terrible great mist was released upon Earth's surface, which turned everything that touched it to nothing more than bone and dust. The forces of the Black Fleet were ascendant, triumphant. Nothing would stop them as they slowly moved in.
I don't even remember the Black Fleet.
They would be ready to take the fight to the traveler above
D1.
Earth. Soon, they would make the killing blow. The traveler was there, ready for the Witness and its disciples to claim. And here in this final moment, they would finally be able to link the Veil and the traveler and allow the completion of the final shape. On one of the vessels of the Black Fleet, one of the Witness's disciples had been selected for the great honor of leading the assault against Earth. His name was Nezarec, the so-called final god of pain. His dark influence had invaded the dreams of a few who'd lived in Sol long before even the time of the traveler's arrival, and now he had come to this new dark feeding ground. The Veil was in his possession, and from his vessel within the Black Fleet, he would tear humanity asunder at their home world. For this one terrible moment, all must have seemed lost. Humanity's outer colonies lay in ruin. Its great defenders all lay dead. The escaping vessels were dashed against the Black Fleet and its forces. And yet, in this moment, the most inexplicable turn of events would take place. And it was all thanks to one who the Witness had deceived long ago. Savathun, the Witch Queen. After she had split from the Taken King Oryx's side, the Witness had taken note of her cunning and her viciousness. It had planned for her to one day ascend to the rank of disciple, superseding even her brother Oryx. In a move that sparked jealousy from Rhulk, the first disciple, the Witness saw her as a potentially great asset. Perhaps it was to spite Rhulk for his failures concerning the annihilation of a species called the Arslid. Perhaps it was simply perceived as being the best use of resources. Whatever the case, Rhulk's vessel had been grounded within Savathun's throne world, and he was instructed to train her to one day ascend into the Witness's highest ranks. In this moment of true victory, she was so close to finally achieving that station. But Savathun is cunning, and she had her own plans. Savathun had no intention of following the doctrine of the Witness and completing the final shape. Perhaps it was because her existence was predicated on lies and deception, that she was so easily able to fit in with its ranks. Perhaps she had learned the truth of the God Wave, and that the witness had lied to the Hive. Perhaps she wished to pursue a greater form of ascension all for herself. Whatever the case may be, Savathun did as she had previously done to Oryx when he was Ulrix. With blade in hand, she fought with Nezarec, betraying him and defeating him. It is not easy to definitively say that this is so, but Savathun might have used the innate power of the Veil to overcome Nezarec.
Okay.
Regardless, she did strike him down. And above Earth, she stole away the Veil, the key to the Witness's plans, before allowing Nezarec's pyramid vessel to crash deep into the surface.
How does one just steal away the Veil?
Of Luna. In this moment, the butcher of 10 million worlds, the god of lies and deception, the next in line to ascend into one of the Witness's most loyal disciples, had scuppered its plans and robbed it of the final victory that it so desperately craved.
So the Witness
Savathun
finally
would shepherd the Veil away to the planet of Neptune, where a mixture of the planet's dense atmosphere, interference from local Vex, and the haywire signal of the Veil itself would be enough to hide it from the Witness's prying eyes. In orbit above, one of the few remaining colony ships, Exodus Indigo, carried the Ishtar Collective researchers known as Maya Sundaresh and Chioma Essie out of the chaos. They were assaulted by a disciple of some kind, but miraculously managed to fend it off with their ship's defenses. The glaive of the disciple that had struck the vessel was used like an antenna, and remarkably, it picked up the remains of Soteria's wayward submind, allowing it to safely harbor within the vessel itself. Even as the Exodus Indigo would shuttle its way into Neptune's atmosphere, they would find the Veil. Thus, many years later, the hidden city of Neomuna would be born. But for the
What the
longest
fuck? I
time,
didn't even
both
know
the Veil
this.
and the city would be cloaked from the whole universe.
What?
And none would know. It would have been assumed quite easily that the Exodus Indigo was just another calamitous casualty of the collapse. But, in reality, their survival represented the one true hope for humanity. For here, the tide had been turned. Humanity's doom was still all but assured, but without the Veil, the Witness could not enact its plans. It could not merge the Traveler's light with the Veil's darkness. It could not create the final shape. The details of what happened next are as vague and mythical as the Traveler itself. Some believed that the Warmind had indeed attempted to destroy the Traveler. Others believed that in a single titanic battle, the forces of darkness were defeated by the forces of light. Others speak of stranger tales still. But what we do know is this. The Traveler sacrificed itself to save humanity.
I told you! The Traveler did!
Low above Earth, it was left
defended
broken.
us.
A massive shard
The
of
Traveler
mysterious
loved us.
sphere can still be found as a remnant of that titanic struggle. It sits to this day in what is now known as the European Dead Zone.
The Traveler loved
the forces
us.
of the Witness were either banished from Sol or left, seeing that the Traveler had sacrificed itself to save humanity. The Black Fleet was forcibly ejected into dark space, or perhaps the Witness left, hibernating there just in case there was anything it could do to one day return and achieve victory. But for now, the Traveler had won, but the cost was utterly staggering. Most of humanity lay dead or dying. The Warmind was nowhere to be found. Our great marvels and technology and culture had been thrown into the fire. Our knowledge was lost, and the ravages of apocalypse were upon us. Worst of all, the Traveler, which had given its last full measure of benevolence above Earth in the name of humanity, was all but completely gone. Ruin was upon us. But from this moment of tragedy, a new hope was born.
Guardians.
In the moment of the Traveler's sacrifice,
Guardians.
thousands of tiny sparks of its own divinity were released. Tiny autonomous drones,
Guardians!
no larger than a clenched fist, spilled forth from the traveler. This was the birth of the ghosts. Their like had never been seen before, and they would change the fate of humanity and all those within the system.
Yes!
Their sacred mission, their singular task.
Peter Dinklage! Yeah, let's fucking go!
Worthy of wielding the traveler's light.
It's us.
And to resurrect them as its undying warriors. Though they would be known as the Risen or Light Bearers in the early days, in the ages that followed, they would almost universally be heralded by another title. They would be known as the Guardians.
The Guardians!
Theirs was not the only light that would emerge after the collapse. The apex of the calamity, as darkness pressed in all around, out in the reaches of the asteroid belt, another miraculous occurrence
the Awoken!
would take place. Aboard one of the Exodus program vessels, known as Exodus Green, the fates of another people were being changed. It would begin with a clash of light and darkness, with a singularity and a young woman who would be the first to cross over. Though she would not know her destiny at the time,
yeah, that was you.
She would one day be sovereign. Her mother in that moment would be Starlight, and her father would be the Dark.
Beautiful. The Awoken.
In the midst of the collapse, an Exodus program vessel, the Exodus Green,
are we shotgunning 10 hours? Nah.
The stars. The passengers and crew were meant to form
How long is it
new
working?
Outpost of humanity.
Alright. We will take a break for now. I think we take a break before hold on. We'll take a break for now. This is the end of humanity and the Guardians. Do you want to start at 3:30? Okay. So we'll take a break for now, and hold on. 10-hour-long video. Yeah, it's a 10-hour-long video. So, if you would like to hang out and listen to more of the Destiny 2 video by Bife, please take a look at the Discord. Join us in the Discord. I will post the schedules there, but for the rest of the day, we have scheduled streams. I'm overwhelmed with info. I need to process this too. But man, the Traveler is so cool. Okay, the Traveler is so cool. I like the Fallen. I really like the Fallen. Man, I was throughout that entire time, I was thinking how fun would it be to live in a golden age of humanity? How wonderful would it be to start a family in the golden age of humanity? How fun would it be to become a craftsman or an artisan in the golden age of humanity under the watchful eye of the Traveler, the blessing of the Traveler? And even so, in the age of collapse, being a Guardian is so fucking cool. The ghosts are so fucking cool. Also, Peter Dinklage was a really good voice. I really like Peter Dinklage as some say the Rasputin shot the Traveler before it saves him. Really? That's crazy. You would have to live over 250 years old. Yeah, that's pretty awesome, right? So yeah. We continue later on. The Destiny lore. So, please let us know. Please let us know if when you're free and stuff. Tomorrow comes. Yes, tomorrow comes. I will be playing Destiny 2 in the Discord. So if you want to play Destiny 2 with me, come join the Discord. So I think there's only like 6 party teams. We can do 6 party teams. I'm pretty new to Destiny 2 because I've only ever played the Red War and then I quit, and so I'll be pretty much starting 3 for content, 6 for raids. I see. Okay. Thank you very much. If you're new here or if you're a VOD watcher, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next time we watch Destiny 2. Bye-bye. And Otsuroi. The Forsaken DLC was cut. Yeah, I heard. Otsuroi, okay? Also, I'll see you soon. Let's watch more soon. Otsuroi, bye-bye.